We know that Puka Nacua is the real deal. Are there any long-term lessons that we can kind of take away from this whole Puka Nacua experience?
The number one long-term lesson we can take away from Puka Nacua is trust your eyes.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
Maybe the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Puka Nacua, though, man, he just keeps turning it up. You know, we're talking about a guy, 11 targets, 9 grabs, 164 and a touchdown last week. And again, he just, he's had some down games here and there, but seemingly Matt Stafford is able to find Puka Nacua, and Puka Nacua is able to turn some of these, relatively mundane catches into big plays. He's making some splash plays out here for sure. And he is making the most of his opportunities. Look, we know that Puka Nacua is the real deal at this point in the season, but are there any long-term lessons that we can kind of take away from this whole Puka Nacua experience?
Well, one, I think the number one long-term lesson we can take away from Puka Nacua is trust your eyes, okay? Because you can dig up some rough old takes exposed style tweets from people after week 1, saying like, man, shout out to all the idiots who are going to blow all their fab on Puka Nacua, or man, it's going to be tough when Puka Nacua comes out in week 2 and, lays an egg against the damn 49ers, or like calling him Travis, what was the guy? Travis Fulgham, or like these like randos who have popped up for big games. The week 1 stat line was a surprise, but it was not a fluke, because if you go in and look at what he did in week 1, like it was all legit stuff. Like it was all big boy routes, man coverage, critical Sean McVay routes, like those big in breakers, dig routes and slant routes and crossing routes and all that stuff. It was just like, oh yeah, you can tell that this is not like some surprising performance. Like, no, this was stuff they had planned and built on in the offseason for this player, right? Like this guy, not just some player, this player. And that brings to the second point with the Puka Nacua stuff is that, I've gotten this question a lot. Like, what lessons can we learn from his prospect profile?
Yeah.
And it's funny because like his prospect profile was very good, right? Like 6'2", 201, 74.2% success rate versus man coverage, just shy of 79% success rate versus zone, 73.3% success rate versus press in reception perception in the rookie roundup mini sample of players. Guy was able to do all of this stuff in college. Like, he was this good in college. The problem is just he had an injury history. He's been banged up a lot as a rookie. That does, at least, like, you got to be a little concerned about that as in the future. But it's one thing too where we talk about, like, I mean, 83% contested catch rate. Like, a guy that would consistently break multiple tackles, 10% of his in-space attempt. He broke multiple tackles. Like, BYU drew up rushing plays for him. You saw him against the Saints take like a big rushing play for a long game. That was such vintage Puka Nacua stuff at BYU. Like, it's tough when you're grading these guys that have the injury history because you just don't know what's going to happen there. And then the third and final point here, like lessons learned for Puka. Landing spot matters, man.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, you talked about this extensively with Cooper Kupp, right? Yeah. If Cooper Kupp doesn't land with Sean McVay and the Rams, he doesn't end up being Cooper Kupp like we know him, I mean, there's a multiverse out there where Cooper Kupp ends up with like the Washington Commanders and never plays a game.
Yeah, because these are guys that they're not really built like these type of receivers. I mean, Puka's, like I said, over 200 pounds, 6'2". Like, Cooper Kupp is not a small little slot receiver, but they've used him as that big slot receiver in one of, at least at parts of his career, one of the most singular roles in the NFL. And that's not to take anything away from Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. But it's just, it is a reminder that, man, these good offensive coaches can really take a player and like envision something from them when they see it. And not try to put that square peg in the round hole or try to put a guy in a box, right? Because that's really when you get these guys fully unlocked in advantageous spots, is when you see a coach that can kind of draw up something different for them. And I mean, Puka Nacua is a great example too, because like he's not the fastest player in the world. Like typically you'd think, the guy I want on those like jet motion plays or full speed motion stuff, like I want Tutu Atwell doing that. And they have used Tutu Atwell at times like doing that stuff too. But you get like a big dude like this that runs those crossing routes and you get him a full head of steam in terms of full field motions, or you get him on out breaking routes where Puka, as a prospect, he ran an out route on 9.6% of his sample routes, had a 75% success rate on those out routes. Those out routes are also kind of staples in the Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford offense because he's so white hot pushing the ball outside the numbers. You get Puka Nacua running full speed motion, full field motion from one side to the other, and then you just rip him on those out routes. Yeah, you're gonna get some big plays there. So it's great to see a prospect like this get fully unlocked in this type of landing spot. And yeah, I think we should put a premium, I guess, from when teams like this that are able to craft these singular roles for these players, like draft a guy that had great college film. And then really can kind of let him fly in this role kit.
The thing I love about the profile that you wrote about him, and this is what you wrote here: Nacua also sneaks up on you as an after-catch mover. I like his build-up speed when uninterrupted and contact balance in the open field. He consistently fights for extra yardage. Nacua went down on first contact on just over 55% of his in-space attempts, broke multiple tackles on 10%. Yeah, I mean, that right there is to me one of the stories of Puka Nacua. Again, I started this by saying he takes relatively routine, mundane opportunities and turns them into something, Yeah. And I think that's what's been the most impressive for me about Puka Nacua. I mean, he's turning plays that any old wide receiver is turning into like 15 yards. He's turning them into 50. And how is he doing it? It's not because he's fast or a twitchy player. It's just he's tough as nails, man. And he fights you off, man. You absolutely have to bring your lunch pail when you're playing Puka Nacua, man, because he's going to make you work.
I'm such a fan of Puka's game. Was a fan of it as a prospect. I think he's definitely come to outkick everybody's expectations, my expectations, certainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, he's one of the most enjoyable receivers to watch because he is like tough as nails too in the run game. Like, I mean, that's another thing too.
Great point.
Man,
great point.
Great run blocker, loves to get up in there and fit the run and stuff like that. And that is a premium in this offense, man.
Yeah.
Like, especially
Gotta
this
do it.
version of the Rams offense where they're running all this like duo and power run stuff. Like, it's crazy. If you sat somebody down and like somehow removed all the biases and removed the jerseys and like the colors on it, like black and white film, made him watch it. You would never guess that the 2017 Rams offense and like the 2023 Rams offense were coached by the same guy, because it just looks, what they do is just so different from the outside run game stuff, like the play action stuff, what they do in the drop back pass game this year. It's all so different, but it's beautiful. And I mean, shout out to Sean McVay and all these guys for getting the best out of a really talented player in Puka Nacua.